My husband woke me up asking why I stood at Mary's doorway every night. I want to tell you about the 2 seconds between hearing the question and deciding what to do with it, because those 2 seconds contained every decision I was going to make for the next hour. I had been standing at Mary's doorway for 10 minutes every night for 8 months since I moved in. Mary is 12. She is my husband Jace's daughter from his first marriage. Her mother Olivia lives 2 states away. Mary is with us most of the time. I had been building a relationship with her carefully for the 3 years I had known her, trying to do the specific thing you try to do as a step-parent: be present without overriding, be warm without demanding. The doorway thing started the first week. Mary had a nightmare on the 3rd night. I heard her through the wall. I went to her doorway. I did not go in because going in felt like overriding. I just stood there. She saw me. She said, "Are you okay?" I said, "Are you okay?" She said, "Yes." She said, "Can you stay there until I fall back asleep?" I said, "Yes." It became a thing. Most nights. She would have a nightmare or wake up anxious, and she had asked me during the first week to stand at the doorway without being asked, because she could see me from her bed, and standing there meant she did not have to call for me, but I would still be there. I understood the specific architecture of what she was asking for: presence without intrusion. I got up for it the way you get up for things you have incorporated into your body. Jace had been sleeping through it. He was a deep sleeper. Mary had not told him about the nightmares. I had not told him because telling him would have required me to explain something about his daughter that she should tell him herself. I had been waiting for Mary to decide. The waiting was her right. He had woken up. He had seen my side empty. He had found me standing at Mary's doorway. He had watched me for a moment without me noticing. Then he went back to bed. When I returned 20 minutes later, he said it quietly in the dark: "Why do you stand at Mary's doorway every night?" He was not accusing me. He was asking a genuine question in a way that told me he understood something was happening that he had not been included in. I could have deflected. I could have said I was getting water. Both would have been lies, and both would have kept Mary's nightmares Mary's. I did not use either answer. I said, "I need you to be actually awake." He sat up. I sat up. I said, "Mary has been having nightmares for 8 months. She asked me to stand at the doorway when they happen. She has not wanted me to tell you. I have been waiting for her to tell you herself. I am telling you tonight because you asked, and I was not going to lie to you about our daughter." He was quiet for a long time. He said, "She has been having nightmares for 8 months, and I did not know." I said, "You did not know because she did not tell you." He said, "Why did she not tell me?" I said, "I think she did not tell you because when she was 10, her mother had nightmares, and Mary saw your face when Olivia told you about them. Your face was the face of a person receiving hard information." Mary filed the face. "I think she did not want you to have to wear that face for her." He was crying quietly. I could hear it. I said, "I am sorry this is how you are finding out." He said, "Do not be sorry. You did the right thing." I said, "I do not want to be the only person who knows anymore. I think it is time for Mary to let you in. I am willing to be the person who brings it to her, or I can step back if you want to come to her yourself." He said, "I want to come to her myself." I said, "Tell her you saw me at her doorway tonight. Tell her I told you the truth because you asked. Tell her you have been wanting to be the person at the doorway, and you did not know you were supposed to be." He said, "What if she does not want that?" I said, "Then we figure out what she does want, but I think she might want you. I think the waiting has been because she was not sure she was allowed to want you." He got up. He went to Mary's room. The door was ajar the way it always was because Mary wanted to see the hallway light. He stood at the doorway. He did not go in. He said, "Mary." Mary said, "Yes, Daddy." He said, "Are you awake?" Mary said, "I have been awake." She had heard everything we said. He said, "I saw her at your doorway tonight. She told me. I want to know about the nightmares. I know you were trying to protect me. I do not need to be protected from you. I want to be someone you can tell things to, even when the things are hard. I know I have not always been that person. I want to learn how to be. Will you teach me?" Mary said, "Yes, Daddy." He said, "Can I come in?" She said yes. He went in. I heard him sit on the edge of her bed. I heard her start crying. I heard him hold her. He came back an hour later. He said they talked. He said she was going to tell him when she had nightmares from now on. He said she also wanted me to keep standing at the doorway sometimes because she said I had a good doorway presence. I said, "That is generous of her." He said she had said she wanted both of us. She said she had not known she was allowed to want both of us until tonight. He said, "I did not know either." I said, "We know now." 3 weeks later, things were better than they had ever been. The nightmares were less frequent. Jace took his turns at the doorway. He was not as good at it. He fidgeted, he leaned against the frame too hard, and it creaked. He breathed too loud, but Mary did not care because the point had never been technique. The point was presence. One night, I got up at 1 a.m. and Jace was already there. He whispered, "She's already asleep. No nightmare tonight." We looked at Mary sleeping and went back to bed together, and it felt like the family was working. That Saturday, Mary had her regular phone call with Olivia. I was in the kitchen and I could hear Mary talking, happy, laughing about something at school. Then her voice dipped the way it does when she is saying something she has been thinking about, and I heard the word nightmares and the word doorway, and my chest got tight. I did not go into the living room. I did not lean closer. Asking what she told Olivia would have been overwriting. That evening, Jace's phone rang. He took it to the other room. I could hear the tone, low, careful, the voice he used when managing Olivia. 20 minutes. When he came back, he looked shaken. He said, "Olivia knows about the nightmares." He said Olivia was upset that no one had told her Mary was having nightmares for 8 months. He said Olivia had said, "So your wife knew my daughter was suffering and kept it a secret from her own father and from me?" He said he had tried to explain, that Mary had asked me not to tell, that I was respecting Mary's wishes, but Olivia was not listening. My first instinct was the same as always. Handle it quietly. I said, "Let me call Olivia. I can explain what the doorway was." Jace hesitated. Then he said, "Okay." He said to be careful. I did not realize I was doing the exact thing that had gotten me here. Taking something that belonged to more than just me and carrying it alone because carrying things alone was what I knew how to do. I called Olivia. I told her about the first nightmare, about Mary asking me to stand at the doorway, about waiting for Mary to be ready. I said, I was following Mary's lead. Olivia said, "You were following a 12-year-old's lead about her own mental health. That is not parenting. That is negligence." I opened my mouth to respond. Before I could, Olivia said, "You are not her mother. You do not get to make those decisions." She hung up. The next day, Jace came home and said Olivia had called him at work. She wanted Mary for an extended visit. She had told told him, I need to talk to my daughter about what has been happening in that house without someone else's wife filtering everything. Someone else's wife filtering everything. I said, she is trying to make this about me instead of about Mary. Jace rubbed his face with both hands. He said, I know, but she has a point about not being told. I looked at him carefully. I said, do you think I was wrong? He did not answer right away. Then he said, I think you were right, but I also think Olivia has a right to be angry. He was standing in the middle. The middle is a fair place for a co-parent. It is a scary place to watch someone stand when you need them next to you. Then Olivia sent a long text to Jace. Organized. The kind a person writes after being up all night. She said Mary needed to see a professional. Then she wrote the sentence I will remember for a long time. If your wife had told someone 8 months ago instead of playing pretend mom in a doorway, Mary could have been getting real help. Playing pretend mom in a doorway. Someone had taken the thing I was most proud of and described it in the worst possible words. That night I could not sleep. I lay in bed and understood that I had done this to myself. Not the Olivia part, the carrying part. I had taken Olivia's anger and tried to handle it alone the same way I had taken Mary's nightmares and handled them alone. I stood in doorways. I stood between things. I carried things quietly. It was not working anymore. I sat on the edge of the bed. I said, I made a mistake. Jace turned toward me. I said, I should not have called Olivia by myself. I was doing the same thing I did with the nightmares, trying to handle it quietly so no one else had to carry it. This is not mine to carry alone. Jace said, no, it is not. I said, we need to figure this out together, and we need to include Mary. He took my hand. For the first time since Olivia's phone call, I did not feel like I was standing in a doorway by myself. That was the thing I had been teaching Mary to ask for and had forgotten to ask for myself. We sat down with Mary at the kitchen table. Jace said, your mom wants you to come visit. She is worried about you. Mary did not look surprised. She looked like someone who had been carrying this information and was waiting for the adults to catch up. She said, I know. She told me. Jace said, what do you want? Mary sat there with her hands in her lap. I had to stop myself from filling the silence because filling silence is what I do, and I was trying to stop doing that. Then she said, I want to see my mom, but I don't want to go because she is mad. I want to go because I want to see her. I looked at this 12-year-old knowing the difference between a reason and a reaction. I said, those are two different things, and you are right to know the difference. Mary looked at me the way she looked at me that first night in the doorway, checking to see if the person standing there was going to stay. She said, will you be okay if I go? I said, I will be okay. The doorway will be here when you get back. We agreed on 1 week. Mary wanted to see her mother. That was the whole reason. Everything else was background noise. Mary left on a Friday. At the front door, she hugged me and said, take care of my doorway. I laughed. She laughed. Jace laughed. The first 3 days were quiet. Mary texted me a photo of an orange cat sitting on a fence post. She captioned it, this cat has doorway energy. Then on the 4th night, my phone rang at 1 a.m. My body knew the time. 8 months of training. I answered and heard quiet crying, the kind that has been going on for a while before someone decides to call. Mary said, I had a nightmare and I went to the doorway of the guest room and no one was there. Something inside my chest came apart. Not broke, came apart, like something held together by tension, and the tension released. I said, I am here. Tell me about it. The usual nightmare. The house that keeps getting bigger. Walking through rooms looking for someone, but no one is there. She said she had done what she always did, gone to the doorway. But the doorway at Olivia's guest room opened to an empty hallway, and no one was standing there, and the absence of someone had made the nightmare worse than the nightmare itself. She said, I want to come home. Then she said something that changed everything. She said, she was already there. She heard me. She came to the doorway. I was confused. I said, your mom came to the doorway? Mary said, yes, but she was crying too. She was crying before I was. I said, is your mom okay? Mary said, she has been sad since I got here. Not mad like on the phone, just sad, really sad. Then Mary said, she told me she used to have the same nightmares when she was my age. I sat in my bed 2 states away and felt the whole story rearrange itself. Olivia's anger, the word negligence, playing pretend mom. All of it looked different now. Not forgiven, not erased, but different. Because Olivia had not been angry at me for standing in the doorway. Olivia had been angry that no one had stood in hers. I said, Mary, I need you to do something. Tell your mom it is okay to call me. Mary said, why? I said, because I think your mom might need a doorway too. The next morning my phone rang. Olivia's name. Her voice was small, the kind of small that comes from being up all night and running out of ways to be anything other than honest. She said, Mary said I should call you. I said, I am glad you did. Long silence, the kind with weight. Then Olivia said, I had the nightmares, the same ones, when I was 11. They lasted until I was 15. No one stood at my doorway. I held the phone and let her words sit in the air across 2 states. She said, when Mary told me about the doorway, I was not angry at you. I was angry at everyone who did not do that for me. I was angry that a stranger did for my daughter what no one did for me. And I know you are not a stranger to her, but it felt like you were taking the one thing I thought I still had, which was being the person who understood her. I said, you do understand her. You understand her in a way I never will. You understand the nightmares from the inside. I only understand them from the doorway. Olivia was crying, the deep kind, stored for a long time. She said, I left because I was falling apart and I did not want her to watch. I said, I know. She said, I thought distance would protect her from becoming me. I said, she is not becoming you. She is becoming herself, and she has people at her doorway. She said, I do not know how to stand at the doorway without going in and falling apart. I said, then go in and fall apart. Mary can handle it. She is stronger than any of us think. She said, she told me that. She said you taught her it is okay to need someone, and it is okay to be the person someone needs. That night, Olivia stood at Mary's doorway. I know because she called me afterward. She said Mary saw her and said, are you okay, Mom? Olivia said, no, but I am here. Mary said, that is enough. Olivia stayed. Mary fell asleep. Olivia said to me, I stood at the doorway. I said, how was it? She said, it was the hardest thing I have ever done. Harder than leaving. I said, it gets easier. She said, thank you for teaching her how to ask for what she needs. I never learned that. I said, she taught me too. Mary came home at the end of the week. She walked through the front door and hugged me first and then Jace. Jace held her for a long time. She said, Mom is going to find someone to talk to about her nightmares, the ones she had when she was a kid. She said you told her to. I said, I did not tell her to. I told her it was okay to fall apart. Mary looked at me with those steady 12-year-old eyes and said, Same thing. That night, I got up at 1 a.m. out of habit. I walked down the hall to Mary's doorway and Jace was already there, arms loose at his sides, head tilted toward her bed. We looked at each other in the hallway light. Mary was asleep, breathing even. No nightmare. Jace whispered, I think we might be okay. I whispered back, I think we have been okay for longer than we knew. I went back to bed. The doorway stayed empty for the rest of the night. Not because no one cared, but because the girl inside had 3 people now who would stand there if she needed them. And knowing that is sometimes enough to sleep through the whole night.